He looked harmless, just another elderly man with sunken eyes, weary gray hair, and the weary silence of age. He was quiet, polite, the kind of man who offered to paint your fence or share a warm story from the good old days. But behind Albert Fish's fragile frame and soft-spoken voice lurked something no one could have imagined, something unspeakable. They called him the Gray Man. Others knew him as the Brooklyn Vampire, but his real name would forever be etched in the darkest chapter of American criminal history. This is the story of Albert Fish and his confession, a chilling descent into the mind of a monster wearing the mask of an old man. Albert Fish was born in Washington, D.C. in 1870. His childhood was steeped in tragedy. His father died when he was just 5 years old, and soon after, his mother placed him in St. John's Orphanage, a place meant to care for children, but known for its brutal punishments. There, the young Fish was beaten regularly, and something inside him twisted. Unlike the other children who wept from pain, Albert began to enjoy it. The whippings, the humiliation, the blood, they didn't break him. They awakened something inside. As he grew older, Fish became a drifter. He worked as a painter, lived in boarding houses, and sent occasional letters to his children. Yes, he had 6. He even had a wife. To most, he was just a strange but harmless man. But inside, he was fighting, or perhaps feeding, dark, violent urges. He began to experiment with self-mutilation, driving needles into his groin and abdomen. Later, doctors would find 29 needles embedded deep into his pelvis. Still, no one suspected. That was perhaps his most terrifying trait: invisibility. He looked like no threat at all. Then came the summer of 1928. In a modest New York apartment, the Budd family was struggling. 18-year-old Edward Budd put out a newspaper ad, hoping to find work. Albert Fish, now nearly 60, saw the ad and responded. But it wasn't Edward he wanted. When Fish arrived, he was dressed in his Sunday best, polite, articulate, and even generous. He told the Budds he was a wealthy farmer looking to hire Edward. But that was a lie. Over the course of a few hours, Fish set his eyes on Edward's 10-year-old sister, Grace Budd. He spoke sweetly to her, smiled at her, and then made a strange request. Could Grace accompany him to his niece's birthday party? The Budds were hesitant at first, but he seemed trustworthy. Just an old man trying to help their son. That was the last time Grace was ever seen alive. What happened after that would remain a mystery for 6 years. The case went cold. Grace had vanished without a trace. But Albert Fish, now back in hiding, was far from done. Over the years, he wrote letters to women whose addresses he found through Lonely Hearts ads. These weren't romantic letters. They were grotesque confessions of cannibalism, torture, and murder. But few took them seriously. They thought he was mentally unwell or simply craving attention. Then in November of 1934, something unimaginable happened. The Budd family received a letter. It was handwritten, stained, and yellow with age. But what it contained would break them. In the letter, Fish admitted to taking Grace. But what he described wasn't just an abduction. It was evil in its rawest form. He told the family how he had lured Grace, how she trusted him, how she screamed when he revealed his true intentions. And then, in sickening, clinical detail, he described how he killed her, cooked parts of her body, and consumed them. He wrote of her flesh tasting sweet and tender, as if describing a Sunday roast. The police traced the letter back to a rooming house where Fish had been staying. When they arrived, he didn't run. He simply nodded, smiled faintly, and said, "I've got one more child to kill." He was arrested on the spot. But what came next shocked even the most hardened detectives. Under interrogation, Albert Fish didn't just confess to Grace Budd's murder. He admitted to dozens more. Children, mostly poor, often neglected, whom he lured with promises of candy, work, or food. He confessed to torturing them, killing them, and in some cases eating them. His descriptions were so graphic that seasoned police officers had to leave the room. And then there were the needles. During a prison examination, doctors x-rayed his pelvis and found over 2 dozen rusty, broken needles embedded in his flesh. He had inserted them himself. Some were there for years. Fish claimed he heard voices, sometimes from God, sometimes from long-dead children, that told him to harm others. He believed he was doing penance, purging sin through pain. Whether it was delusion, madness, or something worse, no one could say for sure. On January 16, 1936, Albert Fish was executed in the electric chair at Sing Sing prison. Witnesses said he went to his death quietly, without resistance. Some say the execution was delayed because the electric chair malfunctioned, possibly due to the metal needles inside his body. But others believe the chair hesitated because it had never encountered evil quite like him. Even in death, Albert Fish's story lingers. His crimes challenged society's understanding of insanity, morality, and the darkness hidden behind ordinary faces. He was no movie monster or masked villain. He was real, a walking nightmare, a man who wore politeness like a second skin, while harboring horrors beneath. So next time you pass someone on the street, quiet, polite, unassuming, remember Albert Fish. Monsters don't always hide in the shadows. Sometimes they sit in plain sight. What do you think? Was Albert Fish insane or the embodiment of evil? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe, because we have more chilling stories coming your way.